Good morning, everybody. It's unbelievable that Thanksgiving was a whole week ago now. I mean, seriously unbelievable. Once again, we're here lighting the candle, talking about a world that works. And we're looking both at evidence for the world is working and evidence for the world can work better and evidence for the world, what would the world look like if it were working. And for you at home viewing this, it seems to have something to do with empowerment. It seems to have something to do with people being able to be in action and to take steps forward, as opposed to being stuck by the world news or stuck by events at home or stuck by this damn virus, you know? So our whole point here is to have fun. These are totally unscripted conversations and they are dialogues. There's no monologuing going on here until I tend to pontificate for a minute or two every once in a while. And at the same time, we're really more interested in what is the way forward? What are we doing here? And how are we going to do it better together? Make sense? So I'm Bill Carell. And if you've watched any of these other podcasts, you know that I convene these little get-togethers. And I've got two guest hosts here today out of the original 5. And that said, we will acknowledge our dear friends, Vanessa and Shelley, who are active in their worlds, making it a better place. So I'd like to introduce my friend Lisa. Lisa, you can say a little bit more about yourself and who you are. And I thought today that unless the two of you, either one of you have a subject?
Open to whatever.
All right. So today I'm thinking about fellowship and trust. Okay. So whatever those two words mean, if you can start to distinguish them in addition to identifying yourself, I'm going to say from that beautiful icon that we are fortunate to have our dear friend and compadre, Vanessa, joining us. I'm going to rename Vanessa now. And Vanessa, you couldn't have come at a better time. We are just introducing ourselves and getting busy. And
wonderful.
With that,
hi, great to be here.
Excellent. So with that said, Lisa?
Hello, I'm Lisa Sheehan. I've loved the field of advertising since as far back as I can remember. Ended up in the radio industry, and now I've created a conscious living magazine called Epic with a co-publisher, a friend of mine, and that stands for Empowering People, Inspiring Community, which is my outside passions led me to it, and now I have a place to put all my newly found motivation and health and energy healing studies. That's it.
Awesome. Any thoughts on fellowship and trust?
Oh, yeah, true. But trust is obviously something that's, I think it's kind of like inherently given to us, but easy to lose and then hard to get back once you lose it. And fellowship, I mean, to me, that comes down to community, and I think we've talked about too, like practicing rituals or ceremony together in a regular, in a group that you join, or anyway, to practice anything that's oh my goodness, I can't talk today.
Well, it sounds like, what was that senator said when he was talking about the bill on pornography 50 years ago? Can't really tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah. Well, well, then being part of community is only, we were just talking about it before we went on the air. It's like, it's what makes the world go round and how you can enjoy a healthier life. Without community, without fellowship, it's a lonely life, and as they said, loneliness is toxic and deadly. So fellowship, and then, so that's my 2 cents. Poorly spoken, but my 2 cents.
Awesome, and thanks for being here. Ken?
Hello, I am Ken Caputo, founder of Questor's Way, and I looked up fellowship just so we have a definition. Figured that always helps, you know. Sometimes Vanessa jumps on that too, so she might have been doing that as well, but I'll go ahead and hit it. So basically, fellowship, just community of interest, activity, feeling, or experience, a company of equals or friends. So I think that's kind of interesting. So so trust, my feeling of trust is it's something that you build. It's a foundational thing, and it takes intention to construct it, and it's fragile. So it takes a long time to build it, and then it falls apart really, really easy, based on how things happen. And the other thing that's kind of interesting, especially looking at the world right now, there's some people have a tendency to extend trust, like, you know, kind of as their first response, and others tend to withhold trust, you know, for longer periods of time. So it's kind of interesting, and I think one of the challenges we're facing right now is a lot of what we believed we could trust, including what's a fact, we have no trust in anymore. So it's going to take some time now to rebuild that. Fellowship is interesting to me because that feels like one of those swords that could cut both ways. You know, it can be good to have people who share your interests and activities. It can also suck you into an echo chamber where you're missing the diversity of views that can lead you into a downward spiral, you know, of, you know, and I've seen that. I know some people right now who are in a tough place, and a lot of that is the fellowship that they've surrounded with themselves aren't giving them any contrasting perspectives that might help them, you know, think in a more healthy and balanced way. So, but on the flip side of it, you know, a good fellowship, creating a good community, like in a business, is an incredibly powerful thing and can be leveraged into a lot of good. That's what I got to start anyway.
Interesting. Vanessa, anything to share with us on fellowship and trust? And please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Vanessa S. Lewis. I'm a marketing copywriter and freelance writer. And Bill, is there anything more specific regarding that question? Because I had missed when you originally posed it.
I will
trust
try to
and fellowship and.
I will try to recreate the conversation before you came on. It went like this. Does anybody have a topic they'd like to discuss today? No, not really. Well, how about we talk about fellowship and trust, or trust and fellowship?
Okay, so that's broad. Okay, so well, that's great. It's funny that Ken said earlier that I might be the one at my computer looking up a topic that I'm not familiar with, which normally I would, doing something a little differently today. I'm actually taking a walk right now as I'm talking to all of you. So if anyone ends up hearing some uncomfortable background noise, let me know and I will take care of that. There are
wind,
some loud trucks going around.
Yeah, we actually can hear the wind, and I'm in mind of Yoko Ono's song.
You can hear the wind. Is it distracting from what I'm saying?
I'm not bothered by it. Are you two?
Nope.
Nope.
It's good.
Excellent.
Okay, so bringing a little nature into our conversation here.
Perfect.
But yeah, so that was good. I was glad he looked that up. Thanks. So, trust. I'll start with that one. That's pretty much agreeing with what Ken and Lisa have said so far. Bill, I don't know if you got a chance to talk yet, but trust is important. I think that we're at a time trust has been very much betrayed. I think most people are questioning. It's one thing to have our own truths, but then to have, I didn't really want to get political, but just what comes to mind with that word trust is on a national scale, it's something very important, and it's been betrayed. Even the confidence that we can have in that our votes are secure, that the democracy is secure, and that whole process. So I think that trust is one of the most precious things. I agree with what Ken said about it being something that's earned, and I think it takes a long time to be earned, and it can take no time at all to be taken away. So it's a very, very valuable currency between any kind of relationship, work relationship, personal relationship, and just existing in general. We learn trust very early on from when we're born with our mothers and our fathers. And if that trust is betrayed in some way, even while we're very young, then we start to, we really get we understand the significance of and how important it is to have it in our lives. And I think also we are, as we go through our lives, and as we get older and a little wiser, we're cautious about where to put our trust. And fellowship is a term I really had never used until I joined a church, really, and that word is used a lot. In fact, we have a joke. Fellowship is whenever we all get together, as a church body, as a church family. I think it could apply to any organization, but like I said, in my experience, I haven't really heard that word used, certainly not as often as I have within, the last 5 years since my husband and I joined this particular church. And in fact, we even have one joke, which is called heated fellowship, which is something that even a husband and wife can have, which is when they're together and there's a little bit of tension between the two of them. So whether it's an argument so that's the joke, it's heated fellowship. And I really don't have too much more to say about that term, just that it's not something I normally would have used in my life, except that we've been using it a lot, and it really so my understanding of fellowship is just that it pertains to a get-together of a group of like-minded people.
Anything else?
Nope.
All right. Thank you for being here. So I will take my turn. Very interesting. Obviously, both of these things are conceptual. They are made up terms to describe something. And the idea of trust, and to me, I put trust in the domain of love and gravity, and some of the other things that we've talked about that don't cast a shadow. And we do know that once distinguished and once understood, they can be felt in the body. They can actually cause a felt shift, where trust is present and where trust is not present. So I'm going to take the point of view that trust is present until you notice it's not. I'm going to say in any situation, as long as what you're doing is met in terms of what I like to call a social contract with the rest of the people, that undistinguished group that we go into, each time it's a little bit different. The feelings in our stomach as we look around the room and we see who's there. We try to examine our view of who they are and what they are. And where trust actually gets built is when people speak. If there's a conversation that is what I will use as a conversation that is resonant or is striking a chord with something that elicits a good feeling in you. And I think that, that definition of fellowship that you gave, the first thing that described it was that it is a feeling of something. And so there is actually a response to when either one of these two things is noticeably present. So trust. Social contract is, I'll be good to you, you be good to me. Or, written in psychological terms, I'm okay, you're okay. Until you disprove my theory, that's how I'm going to operate with you. Mm-hmm. So in addition to that, the first time I heard the word fellowship was when I was, I want to say 5.5, 6 years old. I showed up for my first baseball practice, organized baseball practice. The night before, my dad sat me down and said, Bill, tomorrow you're going to go play real baseball. There's no 4 fouls and you're out, okay? There's no over the pump house is a home run, okay? These are the rules of the game. So he's explaining it to me as if I had the capacity. I still recall the conversation, although I had no idea what he was talking about. So when I showed up, the first thing that can you imagine talking to a lot of 5-year-olds? And the first thing out of our coach's mouth was, guys, you're not baseball players, but you're here to make friends and enjoy fellowship. What does that mean? Nobody makes mistakes around here. What that means is all of us are equals on this baseball field. And if anything gets said to anybody, it's to make them better, both as a player and as a human being. So can you imagine somebody saying that to a 5-year-old? No kidding. I wish I could go find this man and kiss him. The first thing that I heard was, around here, you can't make a mistake. I've probably heard that 5 more times in my entire, 61 years since. So what's really interesting to me is the whole notion of the feeling. And can you imagine, I think my actual designation in the family was that I was right field rock kicker. Which means, at that age, the ball never came to me out there. So all there was for me to find rocks and kick them, and I kind of wish that my parents had some sort of a camera or been able to make movies of it, because I'm sure it was a sight for them. So the whole thing that I want to presence here is neither one of these things in and of themselves has a good connotation or a bad connotation. They just have utility as tools. They have utilities as identifying them as being present or not being present in a group function. So on to a little bit more about fellowship. Ken, I've actually never heard of a single human being referring to fellowship in a negative connotation. I've always heard that if you hang around with groups of people that are doing bad things or are not out for what's good for the rest of humanity, I've actually not heard that called fellowship. So I thought that was kind of an interesting way to language it. So if I stay with my experience of fellowship now, along with Vanessa, it is the coin of the realm in most of the religious things that I've been involved with. Why do we do this? Well, we go and ask people to give us their hard-earned money because we're stewards of the fellowship that goes on around here. And so we take the fellowship, we turn it into stewardship. This allows things to progress through time and to continue to persist. So in terms of when we look out to what's going on in the world, the political situation, I'm actually noticing a huge missing of trust and fellowship. Had no idea this is where the conversation was going to go when I got started, but the antithesis is true, that we're seeing a lot of clan, migration and attraction, the us against them, and gathering evidence for one side being good and the other side being potentially evil. And although they're probably not saying that much on TV, but that's what they're implying, that whoever would monkey with an election, they have to be bad people. It can't be that they're so zealous, and that their fellowship is so strong that they would do anything for the cause, up to and including breaking the rules. I'm not hearing anybody saying stuff like that. So what I'm wondering is, in the context of where we are this week, a week since Thanksgiving, and I know all of us had lots to be thankful last week. What I'm wondering is, how do we access, a return to the presence of trust? And I'm going to give you just one more thought here, and then I'm going to put a sock in it for a minute. If we think about ice, how do you test whether or not ice is safe to skate on in winter? Well, smart people drill a hole in the ice and see how thick it is. Kids typically just get on the ice and skate. And if they fall through, they fall through. However, people who have fallen through for the rest of their lives, whenever they hear ice crack, what do they think? I'm going to fall through. It makes no difference how thick the ice is from that moment on. What they are left with is the trust got broken. They had a trust that the ice would be able to support their body, they'd be able to skate on it, and that trust got broken. So what I'm asking is, what sorts of things would have to happen to transform where we are as a culture and as a community to get ourselves back to where you hop on, either drill through the ice and see whether or not it's thick enough, or you hop on the ice and you skate and you don't worry about it. And if that's a goofy metaphor, have fun with your own. This is anyone who wants. Or change the subject.
Well, I can speak to just the, my thought with fellowship. It's interesting. I just wrote about this yesterday, actually, one of my blog posts, there's a shadow side, and it's always there. Like, we do this in business a lot. Someone who's very passionate can also become overbearing, so it's recognizing that, a fellowship, a community, they can all be in agreement, but what they're in agreement for can have, it can have constructive or destructive influences. So, and I mean, if you're talking about politically right now, there are two very polarized fellowships, and they both passionately believe in the direction and the view that they have, and they're just, there's a very tight community that's rallied around that. So, so it's just interesting. I mean, humans are tribal. So, when you put a group together, and they start sharing common views and they develop that trust in each other, how that expresses on a larger scale, won't that be interesting to see what that leads to, So, and it strikes me, I mean, like, as you were talking about the coach, I've known coaches who in that same position would have said, if you make a mistake, you're going to do a lap. That's how you're going to pay for the mistake you make. Yeah. And if they're consistent with that, you learn to trust the fact that this is how that coach is going to behave, and if all of a sudden they start being nice and say, the only mistake is not learning, you actually won't trust that because they changed from what they were. So, so I guess that it's, who are you being? Why are you being it? And what's the foundation of trust that you're actually trying to build? And do other people agree with that? Because if they don't, how are you ever going to have trust? They're just going to trust that you're not a person that they want to be like, or would follow, or want them, to lead.
So Ken, I actually have a martial arts, interjection here. Have you watched Cobra Kai at all?
I've seen a little bit of it. Yeah, I watched a couple of the episodes.
All right. So those of you who haven't seen Cobra Kai, what this is it's a redo of the Karate Kid, 40 years later or 30 years later, and it's all about how Daniel LaRusso, who has taken his win and his messages from Mr. Miyagi and turned it into a huge consortium of automobile dealerships. And John Lawrence, who went through the rest of his life after being beat up by his sensei Kreese, was a broken man and an alcoholic who decided to reopen a dojo called Cobra Kai because there was a kid that showed up from him who was being bullied at school. The long and the short of it, as you might think, is that Miyagi-Do, which is based on the teachings that Daniel espouses and learned, versus the Cobra Kai dojo. The Cobra Kai dojo is strike first, strike hard, no mercy. Those are the 3 steps. And Miyagi-Do is quite the opposite. So now later on through the course of this show, they grow to a 30 or 40 people in each dojo, each one believing that their fellowship, I now can make you completely right about that whole thought, is that their fellowship is the correct way of thinking, until actually John Lawrence, is approached again by Kreese, who comes out of nowhere because he's supposed to be dead, who takes over the dojo, and then John Lawrence ultimately has to walk away from all of it because it doesn't suit life as he knows it anymore. So that's where we are after 2 seasons, and I can't wait to see if he and Daniel get together next season and figure out some way to take what they both learned in their lives and make it better.
Here's an interesting thing. My martial arts teacher, for at least 20 years now, one of the questions he would ask me when he was training me and teaching me something would be, do you trust that? And usually my answer would be, I don't know. Because until it's been tested, I don't know. And I don't want to disillusion myself by thinking I have something that would work when it may not. It's always one of the challenges when you're talking self-defense, because until you literally get attacked in a real situation, you have no idea. But at the same time, what I always found interesting was the more you learn to trust yourself, your own ability to skillfully and appropriately respond, the stronger you were, whereas, like that whole Karate Kid thing, strike first, strike hard, can be, I'm not sure I trust in my ability to handle this situation without preemptively taking care of it. So, and whereas there's another school of thought that's more like Tai Chi, Aikido, where it's, I trust in my ability to hold my place, hold my center, and I'm going to take whatever comes in, and I'm going to basically reflect that energy back at them. So you try to break my nose, you're going to end up with a broken nose. Sorry, I didn't do it. That was just your intention coming right back at you. So right or wrong, yes or no. I mean, it's just, but you're going to attract certain students that, I would not have been attracted to an aggressive style because I had a temper and I was trying to be less aggressive and be a nicer person, be a more centered human. So, so going to that kind of environment would have actually created further imbalances for me. But that was just my personal choice. It wasn't right or wrong. It was right for me, so I think that's where a lot of this comes into play as well.
So one of the fundamental rules, on one side or the other side is strike first, or the other one is a successful fight. The one in which you win is where there are no punches thrown. Mm-hmm. So if you're waiting for someone else to take the first action and then you respond in kind, and oh, by the way, they get everything you have, but the whole idea is that there's always this opportunity to walk away from a situation and, to diffuse it and have it not be a confrontation that ends up in one person or the other person being injured. Mm-hmm. So all of this, I think, is a metaphor for what we're seeing going on around us. The conversations on social media, the things that are being expressed at family gatherings. I'm just kind of wondering, again, back to the question of whatever your philosophy is, how is it possible for us to keep working as 2 opposing groups whose only responsibility is to make the other one bad and wrong? How long can that go on? At what point does that actually burn itself out?
I think it has to start small too, because like Vanessa said, fellowship can be as small as 2 people. Mm-hmm. So the smallest fellowship, to me, is your family. And my family, we have very opposing views between some of us. But I've come to realize that, for lack of a better term, I see this small group as part of, my family's friends. As when they speak now, I listen to them and they just hate everything. So I'm going with that. It's like, oh, I see. It doesn't matter who's in charge. You just hate everything. I mean, and they hate something more than the other, but, so I go to the end of the conversation now, instead of focusing on that they're saying something against something specific, which is just I'm assuming that, and instead they just hate something, like for instance, energy conservation, or that kind of, they hate how it's being done, but they want energy conservation, so, but which side is doing it right? So I'm trying to have those kind of conversations in my smaller fellowships, and I think that could, branch out to bigger conversations and understandings between smaller groups.
It's terrific. So we're at pretty close to our half hour. Vanessa, did you have any thoughts to kind of put a little bit of whipped cream and cherry on top of the pie here, and then we'll pick it up on the other side?
Is she on mute? Can you tell
She's not showing up as on mute.
No.
I was on mute.
Ta-da!
I was on. All right. I didn't want you guys to hear the big loud trucks, and now I'm where it's nice and quiet again. So, all right. Okay. What I was saying, Bill, was since we're so close to the hour, if it's all right, I can just I'll pick up again with just a few of my thoughts in the next segment. Would that be all right?
We will kick off to you on the second half, and you will receive. Okay?
And hopefully I'll remember everything I was just going to say.
All right. All that said, bye for now, y'all. We'll pick you up on the other side.
All right. See you on the other side, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can hear us at exvadio.com/podcasts, Apple Podcasts app, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.